I request J Sai Deepak ji to take a blessings from Swamiji. श्री गुरुभ्यो नमः हरि ओम तपस्वाध्याय शुश्रूषा कृष्ण पूजा रतम मुनिम विश्वेशमिष्टदम वंदे परिव्राट चक्रवर्तिनम. It's a great opportunity for us to listen to the views of J Sai Deepak ji. J Sai Deepak is a senior advocate practicing primarily before the Supreme Court of India and the High Court of Delhi. A mechanical engineer from Anna University, Sai graduated with the bachelor's degree in law from IIT Kharagpur's Law School in 2009 and has carved a niche for himself in civil, commercial and constitutional matters. He has been part of several landmark cases of commercial significance before the Supreme Court of India and High Court of Delhi. In 2019, Sai was presented the Young Alumni Achievers Award by his alma mater IIT Kharagpur. He is the author of the bestsellers India, that is Bharata, Coloniality, Civilization, Constitution from Bloomsbury, and another book, India, Bharata and Pakistan, the Constitutional Journey of a Sandwich Civilization from Bloomsbury. Sai also writes for the Indian Express in his column, The Sidebar. In November 2024, at the age of 39, Sai was designated as senior advocate by the High Court of Delhi, making him among the youngest senior advocates in the country. Today's concept, I will give you a brief note before the J Sai Deepak's lecture begins. The vision of Parama Pujya Vishwaprasanna Tirtha Swamiji following the construction of the Sri Rama Mandira goes far beyond the creation of a historic monument. His largest civilization aspiration is the meaningful re-establishment of RamaRajya, an order grounded in dharma, justice and ethical governance in our contemporary society. The realization of RamaRajya in today's polity is both a collective and individual's responsibility. While governments and institutions must uphold justice, accountability and good governance, RamaRajya can truly flourish only when individuals embody its values in their daily conduct. Our tradition reminds us, Ramadivat pravartitavyam, na Ravanadivat. One must live like Rama and not like Ravana. This timeless guidance emphasizes that the ethical citizens are the foundation of a righteous social order. In this context, it is our privilege to listen to J Sai Deepak, whose reflections on individual duty and collective responsibility offer valuable insights into realizing RamaRajya in the present age. I respectfully request Shri J Sai Deepak to share his thoughts.
Namaskara, Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. I've been asked to speak on the subject of the individual and collective role in the establishment of RamaRajya. In fact, before getting onto the stage, I was asking scholar Sri Pranav Rashishta ji, why is it RamaRajya and not dharma-rajya? To which he said, in fact, he educated me on the fact that Rama is seen as the embodiment or personification of dharma, just as Gangaji is seen as the liquid personification of dharma. Usually as a lawyer, one of the things we are expected to do is to understand the meaning of words and try and see how do you make sense of the layers underneath. So if I'm asked to speak on the individual and collective role in the establishment of RamaRajya, the assumption therefore is we are currently not living in RamaRajya. The next question that needs to be asked is, if we have to proceed in the direction of the establishment of RamaRajya, is the marg or the path towards it clear or not? So let me first identify the challenges in the establishment of RamaRajya and from there move towards what is it that we can do at an individual level and a collective level. When I first started writing the book in 2020, I started on Vijayadashmi 2020, October 12th in fact. And I concluded the first draft of the book on Sri Ramanavami in 2021. I think it was 9th of April 2021. It took me about 6 months and 15 days to finish the first book. And usually that's my window between Vijayadashmi to Ramanavami is when I try and finish a book. What I realized is, even if the collective will of the society of Bharat wants to establish RamaRajya, the constitution of Bharat may come in the way of the establishment of RamaRajya. Does this mean that the constitution has pitted itself against the Bharatiya civilization, dharma and the concept of RamaRajya? In some parts, the constitution recognizes the civilizational history of India as Bharat, but I believe that largely that recognition is symbolic, with no practical application of that civilizational experience in administration, policy making, education, or justice delivery mechanisms. Importantly, the Constitution expects us to treat all values with the same level of respect and legal protection, which means even those philosophies and positions which are anti-Rama and therefore anti-dharma have the same degree of protection under the Constitution. And if this is the premise and this is how equality is supposed to function under the Constitution, surely the Constitution as it stands cannot help us in the establishment of RamaRajya. If the Constitution were indeed pro-RamaRajya, it shouldn't have taken us between 1950, 26th of January until 14th of November 2019 for us to secure victory for one place of worship. No constitution that is pro-dharma and pro-Rama would have expected us to prove that this was the birthplace of Sri Rama. So in my view, the starkest example as to how this document may not be conducive to the establishment of RamaRajya is in its actual expression of agnosticism, in his existence, in his divinity, and his history. Now, what is worse is that on the strength of the very same constitution, we have been deprived of the very same right with respect to other places of worship. So not only did we have to fight close to a 400-year battle to secure one place of worship, out of which close to 70 years or more was spent in fighting it before the courts of Bharat, which is supposed to be a civilizational cradle for the Bharatiya civilization, before the courts of Bharat, before the highest court of the land itself. Under the strength of the constitution, or on the strength of this constitution, we have even passed laws which prevent us from reclaiming other places of worship. So how is this constitution pro-establishment of RamaRajya? 3, this constitution does not say that in the event of any confusion on the interpretation of a provision, it will fall back on a Bharatiya language for clarification. Which means you cannot fall back on the definition of dharma to understand religion. Therefore, neither directly nor indirectly does this document accept the existence of dharma. Instead, it has fashioned for itself, through its history and through its judgments, the creation of a doctrine of constitutional morality, which goes on to the extent of saying that constitutional morality is not even the collective morality of people. Because if constitutional morality is equal to collective morality, then the collective morality of Bharat has always been dharma. Therefore, through judicial interpretation, we have come out with doctrines which push the constitution further away from dharma. To say that under no circumstances can constitutional morality be equated with collective morality, therefore it takes away the possibility of making the argument that the barometer or the moral compass of Bharat has always been dictated by dharma. Now we are being told that this is consistent with the universal position on constitution, including the European position. I'll give you a simple example to understand why this is not consistent with European position. One of the areas of practice that I practice is Bauddhika Sampada, which is intellectual property. And the fundamental principle for grant of any kind of monopolies like patents, copyrights, trademarks across the world is that you will not grant right over something that violates the morality of the society. When the question of morality was raised in the European Patent Office for the grant of a patent in Europe, the question was whether this invention goes against European morality, and therefore the question was what amounts to European morality. So they went back to the civilization of Europe. So Europe has the legal room to fall back on its civilization and its collective morality when the legal definition of morality is called into question, whereas Bharat's Supreme Court has taken the position that constitutional morality cannot be based on its civilizational morality. So the person you are copying from is comfortable saying that his morality will be drawn from his society, but the slave, the brown slave, does not even have the freedom, after gaining political freedom, to say that my morality will be drawn from my conscience and dharma. This is also that land which has tolerated the continued existence of legislations which were set up in the 1800s by the name of Board of Revenue to take over Bharat's nerve center of civilizations, namely our temples. Because when the British man was looking at our temples, he basically said, Just as the Catholic Church, prior to the Protestant Reformation movement, was a den of corruption because there is a priest in the place, Bharat's temples are equally dens of corruption because there is a Brahmin sitting there. Second, because they are polytheists and they are idol worshippers, fundamentally their religion is dark, and there can't be a question of honesty in a fundamentally dark religion. Therefore, those institutions must be taken over because these people can't be trusted with their own money and resources. I can understand the position taken by a Protestant Reformation-inspired Christian colonizer taking this position until 1947. What is the justification for Bharat taking this position post 1947? The only justification could be that independent Bharat, so-called Swatantra Bharat or Swarajya Bharat, also believes in the very same position taken by the colonizer with respect to its own temples and its guardians. Any other country, post its political decolonization or independence, would have taken the decision to free its temples from state control because that was the position of the colonizer, not the independent country's position. What is worse is that this country takes the position that it's a secular state and still justifies, citing secularism, as to how it can continue to control the institutions of only the majority community. I would want to ask this audience a very simple question, perhaps even the audience watching this online. Is it possible to establish RamaRajya politically or otherwise while our temples are under state control? Yes or no? The answer is a no. Why is it not possible for us to conduct a referendum on this issue, asking the people of this country, no, not the people of this country, the Hindus of this country, whether or not they want their temples and their resources to be under the control of the government? How difficult is it to undertake this simple exercise? The reason why we have not undertaken this exercise is that even we continue to believe that our institutions are not capable of being run on our own, because if they go into private hands, either there will be Jativad or there will be corruption, is the constant assumption which is being pushed. The interesting part is, out of the 28 and odd states or more states in this country, Hindu-specific temple legislations are present only in 13 to 15 states, not in the rest of the states. Why? Because in the rest of the states, the Public Trusts Act is basically used as a legislation to expect transparency and accountability from all charitable institutions regardless of their religion. This raises two questions. Are we therefore saying that Hindus are corrupt only in these 15 to 13 states? That's the first question. Second, if there is already a legislation such as the Trusts Act, which is responsible for oversight with respect to transparency, fiscal accountability, and honesty, why do you need a further legislation over and above the Trusts Act in the form of a Hindu religious and charitable endowment legislation? Now, a secular state takes the position that it will not interfere with the religious affairs of a temple or any other institution, which means the HRC legislation cannot interfere with your Paddhati. It can't interfere with your Sampradaya. It can't interfere with your rituals. That means what can it interfere with? Only fiscal issues or financial issues, correct? So if the HRC legislation is interfering only with the financial issues, and the Trust Act is meant to address only financial issues, why do you need two legislations to address the same issue? Because the Trusts Act does not permit the state to appoint an executive officer to sit inside the temple permanently. who is a tenant without an eviction clause, a tenant without a rent. It's a marriage where even talaq is not possible. Therefore, it proves the point that we have been making for quite some time, that the HRC legislation was devised by the British man to ensure that a representative of the state is permanently sitting inside the temple. Now, which doctrine of constitutional morality permits this position to continue post 26th of January 1950 is the question we should ask. Establishment of political RamaRajya or dharma-rajya is impossible unless there is swecha when it comes to spirituality and our religion. A community that does not even have the independence to run its own religious institutions surely does not have the independence to run its own country, because you are constitutional slaves in your own country. That document effectively treats you as people who are incapable of running, only you people, as incapable of running your own religious institutions. This is the beauty of so-called India, that is Bharat, post 1947, at least from 26th of January 1950. You should read Article 25 more and more, and you'll realize the history of it is seriously problematic. In the 1871 census and in the 1872 and 82 census and 1901 census, for the first time, in fact, synchronized census was undertaken by the British man in this country from 1881, to the best of my limited knowledge. Synchronized census means not a particular state, but across the country. A single exercise which is countrywide. In the early 1900s and late 1880s or 1890s, it was revealed that those communities which are non-Hindu, specifically the second largest majority, not the minority, the second largest majority in this country, has 80 castes within their community. 80 castes, 80. This is documented in my book, second book, India, Bharat and Pakistan. I cited this in the context of the events leading to the partition of Bengal in 1905. So, if there is documented basis that there are jatis within other religions, why does Article 25 take the position that the Indian state shall have the right to pass laws to prevent jati-based discrimination only with respect to Hindu temples? Therefore, the Constitution has taken the position under Article 25 that jati-based discrimination happens only within Hindu religious institutions. So there are two assumptions that emanate from the Constitution as far as your institutions are concerned. One, you are corrupt. Second, you are casteist. And those are constitutional assumptions which are exclusive to one particular community, which happens to be the so-called majority. In which other country is this possible? Now, how do you hope to establish RamaRajya in the face of such a constitution that thinks that you're corrupt and casteist? Not possible. Is it possible to think of this constitution as being remotely friendly to establishment of RamaRajya or dharma-rajya, both being the same, when some of its authors or putative authors have taken the position that you should not have faith in Rama, Krishna, Shiva, Brahma, Vishnu, whatsoever? How could such a constitution be pro-RamaRajya? If one of the chief architects effectively was of the opinion that Annihilation of discrimination would require annihilation of Sanatana Dharma, and also took the position publicly that you are not supposed to repose faith in the Hindu Trinity whatsoever, can that constitution help you move towards RamaRajya? It's like saying that there is a problem in the origin of a particular water stream or the fount of it, but by the time it reaches your home, you expect it to be pure. Where is the filtration mechanism in between? The filtration mechanism should have been judicial interpretation over the years to try and move away from those presumptions. But if anything, judicial interpretation over the years has only doubled down on the fundamental assumptions of the Constitution with respect to the majority community. So here's my suggestion. If you are serious about establishment of RamaRajya and therefore dharmarajya, ensure that dharmic institutions are free to perform their duties without the fetters of the state. I am not saying that the state should not have any right to look at what we do. No, it can and it must. I am not saying if there is corruption, the state cannot step in. I am only saying the state's limited role must be to come, perform a limited surgery and get out. Not stay here for eternity. And it must exercise this power not just with us. It must exercise this power across the board. Second, if the state is preventing us, or the founding document is preventing us, or a document citing the founding document is preventing us from reclaiming our dharmic institutions, then surely dharma is not free in this land, and its freedom is less than the freedom of other faith systems. Three, the proof of a community's existence is its presence. Demographic presence and real estate presence. Therefore, if a state citing the Constitution is actively alienating the resources and the properties belonging to the Hindu community, then it is stripping away the economic freedom of the community to do what it is allowed to under the Constitution. How will you propagate your faith without the resources to do it? At this point, Hindu property is everybody's property, everybody else's property is everybody else's property. So the relationship between the Indian state and the Hindu civilization is extremely lopsided, which is unfortunately bound by a document which doesn't seem to create a level playing field. It is meant to create a level playing field, but it does not. In fact, it has created a level playing field for the oppressor and the oppressed. The predator and the prey have equal rights under this Constitution. So, how do you convert this into collective and individual responsibilities? With time, you will realize that whether or not the state can be trusted to protect our interests, Hindu non-state institutions will be the only options of last and first resort for our safety, security, dignity, and freedom. Therefore, unless these institutions are strengthened, it makes very little sense to talk about RamaRajya. Pranavji was educating me just before I got on the stage to tell me the difference between European conceptions of utopia and Hindu conception of RamaRajya is that RamaRajya has already existed. We are only trying to recreate it. Whereas Europe is thinking of it because it has never seen one. My point is, we will end up Europeanizing RamaRajya by making it utopian if we don't act on these fundamental requirements. It is a pipe dream, it is wishful thinking, as long as these fundamental requirements are not addressed. Non-dharmic expansionism is being constitutionally protected and judicially protected. Basic dharmic survival is constantly under question. This is not a level playing field. It worsens our situation because at least under the British man I could openly rebel. I can't do this under the Indian state because I'll be given a different brand altogether. And I don't want to because this is my homeland. And post-independence, the entire hope was that the second-class treatment that was meted out to us from 712 CE until 1947 would change. That we would no more be dhimmis, legally or otherwise. Now, whether we are constitutional dhimmis, I will leave it for the audience to decide on their own. I will not answer that question. 3, therefore, what is the role of members of the community? Do not abandon your institutions. Don't talk when you can support. And don't run away when you're expected to talk. When your institutions are at loggerheads with the state, and the state is finding a way to divide or weaken or dilute, stand by your institutions, materially and otherwise. I have been discussing some of these issues at least since September 2016 publicly, although I have discussed this privately much before. So here are a few bitter pills based on what I've learned. We are the worst when it comes to contributing materially to our causes. I don't need any philanthropy or charity to do what I do because I do this only 10% of the time. The rest of the 90% is busy making Lakshmi ji as a practicing lawyer. However, rather seeking her blessings. However, when it comes to the cause of the community, other than wasting energy on WhatsApp groups, I haven't seen members of this community come forward and say, what do you want? Here is the check, let me support. That hasn't happened so far. And somehow we hope that one Avatara Purush will come without us having to spend a penny and do it free of charge. Whereas the fundamental belief is that dharma requires artha for its sustenance, for its protection from within and outside. Because without artha, you can't cultivate people who can speak for you in the political arena and other places. And proof of that are recent legislative developments in this state, and I'll leave it to you. So while you try to keep your heritage and civilization alive, somebody is actively using all constitutional mechanisms and legislative mechanisms to constantly shrink your space. to the extent that your language will be criminalized. You cannot even speak about history and the realities of history and documented historical facts without attracting a penal legislation or a criminal legislation. So my humble suggestion to members of this audience and people watching it, you cannot indulge in esoteric discussions on dharma without simultaneously contributing to its survival on the ground. I am not saying both are mutually exclusive. Do both. Respect the people who are fighting for you. Give them the confidence that while they are fighting those difficult battles and they are directly in the line of fire, you are behind them, taking care of them and their responsibilities and their requirements. This is the difference between us and others. This is the delta or the difference that we have not been able to match or bridge yet. The test of dharmic strength and its survival is not just the ability of dharma to occupy positions of power. It lies especially in its ability to use its non-state institutions to get the job done when the positions of power are occupied by those who are not friends of dharma. Which means regardless of who occupies the position of power, dharma must find a way to get the job done. That doesn't mean give up on political power. It just means that make sure that your institutions are robust and strong and independent enough to negotiate with the state to protect your space and your rights. I am not an expert on Ramayana, nor will I pass off as one. I am not a Shastric expert under any circumstances, at least not yet. But I understand the way my world works in terms of what happens in corridors of power and in corridors of courts. I have seen how other communities rally around to protect their interests. There is no point in talking about the survival and celebration and embracing of yoga in the rest of the world when yoga is being de-Hinduized in your own country. It makes really no sense. There is no point in constantly crying about how somebody has found a way to westernize yoga nidra or pranayama without finding out whether or not Bharat as its homeland continues to be conducive for the survival of these traditions and proud ownership of these traditions. I've said this before and I'll say this again and end my limited contribution here. If you don't protect dharma, the nature of dharma is such that it will find a better place for its survival because it will always find its adherents. Because it is universal. So if Bharatiyas don't want dharma, we are the losers, not dharma. So dharma will find a way to establish itself wherever people find value in it, whether it's Africa, Russia, Germany, wherever. So you have to ask yourself this basic question, do I want dharma to remain in the mothership or not? Jai Shri Ram, Vande Mataram.
ಅಭಿಪ್ರಾಯ ಹೇಳ್ಬೋದು ಅಂತ
ನಾನು ಸಮಯದಲ್ಲಿ ಹೇಳಬೇಕಷ್ಟೇ ನೀವು ಥ್ಯಾಂಕ್ಸ್ ನೀವು ಥ್ಯಾಂಕ್ ಯು ಹೇಳ್ಬೋದು ನಾನು ಕನ್ನಡ ಥ್ಯಾಂಕ್ ಯು ಹೇಳ್ತೇನೆ
ನಿಮ್ದು ಏನು ಅಭಿಪ್ರಾಯ ಹೇಳಿ ನಾನು ಅದನ್ನು ಹೇಳಿ
ಸರ್ವೇ ಜನಾ ಸುಖಿನೋ ಭವಂತು ಅನ್ನೋದು ನಮ್ಮೆಲ್ಲರ ಆಶಯ. ನಿತ್ಯ ನಾವು ಅದನ್ನು ಭಗವಂತನಲ್ಲಿ ಪ್ರಾರ್ಥನೆ ಮಾಡ್ತಾ ಇರ್ತೇವೆ. ನಾವು ಪ್ರಾರ್ಥನೆ ಮಾಡಿದರೆ ಸಾಲದು, ಆ ದಿಸೆಯಲ್ಲಿ ನಾವು ಪ್ರವೃತ್ತರಾಗಬೇಕು. ದೇಶದ ಸ್ಥಿತಿಗತಿ ಏನು ಅನ್ನೋದನ್ನು ಸದಾ ಜಾಗೃತರಾಗಿ ಪರಿಶೀಲಿಸ್ತಾ ಇರಬೇಕು. ದೇಶದ ಹಿತವನ್ನು ಸಾಧನೆ ಮಾಡಲಿಕ್ಕೆ ಯಾವ ರೀತಿಯಲ್ಲಿ ನಾವು ಕಾರ್ಯಪ್ರವೃತ್ತರಾಗಬೇಕು ಅನ್ನೋದನ್ನು ಕೂಡ ವಿಮರ್ಶಿಸ್ತಾ ಇರಬೇಕು. ಅಂತಹ ವಿಚಾರದಲ್ಲಿ ಶ್ರೀಯುತರು ನಿರಂತರವಾಗಿ ತೊಡಗಿದ್ದು ತಮ್ಮ ಮಾತುಗಳ ಮೂಲಕ, ತಮ್ಮ ಕೃತಿಗಳ ಮೂಲಕ ಅದನ್ನು ಸಾಧಿಸಿದ್ದಾರೆ. ಅವರನ್ನು ನಾವು ಹೃತ್ಪೂರ್ವಕವಾಗಿ ಅಭಿನಂದಿಸ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದೇವೆ. ಈ ತೆರನಾದ ದೇಶ ಸೇವೆ ನಿರಂತರವಾಗಿ ಅವರಲ್ಲಿ ನಡೆಯುವಂತೆ ಕೃಷ್ಣ ಮುಖ್ಯ ಪ್ರಾಣರವರಿಗೆ ದೀರ್ಘಾಯುರೋಗ್ಯ ಭಾಗ್ಯವನ್ನು ನೀಡಲಿ ಅಂತ ಆಶಿಸ್ತಾ ಇದೆ.
Swamiji expressed that every day we pray that Sarve Jana Sukhino Bhavantu, but prayer doesn't alone work. So we have to act. So every day we have to find some problems in the society to act on those. Our Sai Deepak ji continuously in that effort, making awareness in the society about the problems and how to solve those problems, not only about the problems and the solutions for the problems also. And Swamiji blesses him for his future endeavors, and it's Swamiji blesses that his words reach out to the larger audience and collective effort should emerge from these speeches. We are very thankful to our Purna Pramati Parivara for making this happen in Purna Pradnya Vidyapita, especially Srinivasa Vedagarbhacharya and Pranav Vasishta and Srinidhi Vasishta also. We are very thankful to J Sai Deepak ji for making his time to have such dialogue in this podium and provoking a thoughtful conversation in our community and in our society. Thank you very much.
ಶ್ರೀ ಗುರುಭ್ಯೋ ನಮಃ. ಸಾಯಿ ದೀಪಕ್ ಅವರಿಗೆ ಧನ್ಯವಾದಗಳನ್ನು ಸಮರ್ಪಣೆ ಮಾಡ್ತಾ, ಮುಂದಿನ ಕಾರ್ಯಕ್ರಮ ದುರ್ಗಾ ವಿಲಾಸ ಎಂಬ ಯಕ್ಷಗಾನ ಬಯಲಾಟ ಈ ವೇದಿಕೆಯಲ್ಲಿ ಪ್ರದರ್ಶನವಾಗಲಿಕ್ಕಿದೆ. ಎಲ್ಲ ಕಲಾಭಿಮಾನಿಗಳು ಪೂರ್ಣ ಕುಳಿತು ಯಕ್ಷಗಾನವನ್ನು ವೀಕ್ಷಿಸಬೇಕಾಗಿ ಕೇಳಿಕೊಳ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದೇವೆ. ಇವತ್ತಿಗೆ ಸಮಗ್ರ ಸುಧಾ ಪರೀಕ್ಷೆಯ ಒಂದು ಕಾರ್ಯಕ್ರಮ ಮುಕ್ತಾಯವಾಗ್ತಾ ಇದೆ. ಹಾಗೂ ಭಾಗವತ ಸಪ್ತಾಹ ಪಾರಾಯಣ ಮತ್ತು ಗುರುಗಳಿಂದ ಉಪನ್ಯಾಸ ಕಾರ್ಯಕ್ರಮ ಅದು ಕೂಡ ಇಲ್ಲಿಗೆ ಮುಕ್ತಾಯವಾಗ್ತಾ ಇದೆ. ನಾಳೆ ಪೂರ್ಣಪ್ರಜ್ಞ ವಿದ್ಯಾಪೀಠದ 70ನೇ ವಾರ್ಷಿಕೋತ್ಸವ ಬೆಳಿಗ್ಗೆ 9 ಗಂಟೆಯಿಂದ ಸಾಯಂಕಾಲ 6 ಗಂಟೆಯವರೆಗೂ ನಮ್ಮ ಪೂರ್ಣಪ್ರಜ್ಞ ವಿದ್ಯಾಪೀಠದ ವಿದ್ಯಾರ್ಥಿಗಳಿಂದ ವೈವಿಧ್ಯಮಯವಾಗಿರುವಂತಹ ಪ್ರದರ್ಶನಗಳನ್ನು ಆಯೋಜಿಸಲಾಗಿದ್ದು, ಇದೇ ವೇದಿಕೆಯಲ್ಲಿ ನಮ್ಮ ವಿದ್ಯಾರ್ಥಿಗಳಿಂದ ಬಗೆ ಬಗೆಯ ಸಾಂಸ್ಕೃತಿಕ ಕಾರ್ಯಕ್ರಮಗಳು ಹಾಗೂ ಅನೇಕ ಚರ್ಚಾಗೋಷ್ಠಿಗಳು, ಕಿರು ನಾಟಕಗಳು, ಲಘು ಸಂಭಾಷಣೆಗಳು, ಈ ರೀತಿಯಾಗಿರುವಂತಹ ವೈವಿಧ್ಯಮಯವಾಗಿರುವಂಥ ಕಾರ್ಯಕ್ರಮವನ್ನು ತಾವೆಲ್ಲ ಬೆಳಗ್ಗೆಯಿಂದ ಸಾಯಂಕಾಲದವರೆಗೂ ಬೆಳಗ್ಗೆ 9ರಿಂದ 12 ಗಂಟೆವರೆಗೂ ಮತ್ತು ಮಧ್ಯಾಹ್ನ 2 ಗಂಟೆಯಿಂದ 5 ಗಂಟೆವರೆಗೂ 5 ಗಂಟೆಗೆ ಸರಿಯಾಗಿ ಇಷ್ಟು ದಿವಸಗಳ ಕಾಲ ಈ ವೇದಿಕೆಯಲ್ಲಿ ಸುಧಾ ಪರೀಕ್ಷೆಯನ್ನು ನೀಡಿರುವಂತಹ ಎಲ್ಲ ಸುಧಾ ವಿದ್ಯಾರ್ಥಿಗಳು ಹರಿಭಜನೆಯನ್ನು ನಡೆಸಿಕೊಡಲಿಕ್ಕಿದ್ದಾರೆ. 5ರಿಂದ 5:45 5